Now, Prince Harry's legal challenge against the Home Office over his security arrangements is set to reach the High Court today. This comes after the Executive Committee for the Protection of Royalty and Public Figures said they no longer give Harry the same degree of protection when he visits the UK.
The hearing's going to last over 3 days. The decision on the challenge is expected to be delivered much later. We're now joined by Vanity Fair Royal Editor Katie Nicholl. Katie, why does he continue with this? How big a security risk is he? A lot of people would say he could pay for this himself, and a lot of people could say that he's made himself a security risk.
Well, I think a lot of people might say that, but as far as the Duke of Sussex is concerned, he fought 2 tours in Afghanistan. That's always made him a target. He is still, you like it or not, a senior member of the royal family. And his visits to Britain have been limited. In fact, I think he's probably been over here more to be in court than he has to see his family in recent years. However, his argument is that, yes, he can afford his own security. He does pay for his own security, but that doesn't match up to the special elite force of police protection that VIPs, royals get. This is RAVIC who decide this. This is a committee which decide who gets this elite level of protection, which Harry believes that he's entitled to. Now, you'll remember that was stripped of him back in 2020 when he and Meghan stood down as working royals. It was decided that if they gave up those titles, the security also had to go with it. Harry decided he would challenge that decision made by the Home Office. And that's why we don't know if he's coming back to be in court for this 3-day hearing. I suspect he might be doing this remotely, but a decision will be made. But it is an appeal. The Home Office have ruled that he won't get this protection. Harry is now going back into court to argue that he should. And interestingly, what he's saying is that the decision that was made by this committee was made by some former palace staff, and palace staff that he has a bit of an issue with. Edward Young, the late Queen's private secretary, being one of them.
Oh, so he feels this is personal. That's interesting. And yet, do we think that the Queen would have signed off on this? Of course, we all remember back to that summit at Sandringham just before Mexit, as it was dubbed. Presumably, Harry would have known that if he was taking this decision, this would have been one of the consequences.
Well, I think it's hard to imagine the Queen not signing off on anything that her private secretary would have implemented. I mean, she wouldn't remember have had a say over what RAVIC were doing. But she did make the point, didn't she, that when you're in, you're either in or you're out. And I think the feeling amongst all senior members of the royal family, particularly in this climate of cost-cutting and trying to streamline the monarchy, because of the cost that it involves to the taxpayer, I think it was pretty much ubiquitous opinion that he should be stripped of that security.
What about the cost this court case is coming in at? Does he pay for that himself?
Well, I suppose it depends whether or not he wins. I think we'll have to wait on that. I mean, if he wins, then possibly all of his damages will be covered, and I would imagine it would be the Home Office that would be hit by that. So we'll have to wait and see what the outcome is. I mean, I think it's worth stressing that given that he lost the first round and this is now going to appeal, I mean, if he does win this, that'll be a massive, major victory. And let's not forget, it's not his only court case over here in Britain. He's taking on a number of newspapers as well. So I think it's going to be an interesting one to watch. And of course, if he does win it and he gets this protection, will we see more of him in Britain? Do we want to see more of him in Britain? And will that just really irritate British taxpayers that they're having to pay for the Sussexes in terms of their security when they come over here in the future?
Yeah, so many questions there. And obviously the timing of all of this, what are we just a week on from Endgame? Omid Scobie's latest book. Now, the Sussexes haven't come out and made any public statements about it, which they could have done if they wanted to distance themselves from the kind of race allegations that were made in there. 2 royal racists named accidentally, allegedly, in that book. And it's prompted debate again here about whether or not actually the pair should have their HRH title stripped, let alone their security. And we remember, of course, Princess Diana had her HRH stripped from her for far fewer transgressions, you could argue. She never brought any sort of allegations like this upon the royal family.
Well, no, she divorced the royal family, and some might say that that's exactly what Harry and Meghan have done in all but name. They've upped and left. And of course, there's a possibility that the decision to strip them of their titles won't actually have to be made by the royals. It may be made through the Houses of Parliament. But I suspect, well, we know from this couple that they will do everything possible to hold on to those titles, because without the Duke and Duchess, they're just Harry and Meghan, and that simply doesn't carry the same amount of weight. So I think it's a case of wait and see what's going to happen on that one. And as to your point about Endgame, I think it's very unlikely, Isabel, that there's going to be any comment out of the Sussexes camp, also out of the palace. My experience in all of this is that when these sort of inflammatory books come out, the palace's view is that give the dust time to settle. It inevitably does. It did, the first time round after these alleged racist comments were made. I think, for the palace to wade in at this stage will only, give further oxygen to the publicity of a book that, frankly, they just want to go away.